got really, after citizen comments, we have 2 items. We're going to handle 1.3 first. That's a brief report from staff regarding COVID-19 update discussion, and it would include both financial impact, some of our health numbers, operational adjustments, et cetera. Following that, we'll get a report from the Lubbock Economic Recovery Task Force. That'll be Mr. Massengale and Robert Taylor and Dave Marcinkowski. That should be 45 minutes worth of the presentations, of about a little less than 30, and then some time for discussion. And then following that, we'll look at just briefly at the draft of the new emergency declaration. And we've blocked an hour and 15 minutes total for this. And then we'll go to executive session for the items that are listed on our executive session agenda for today. Okay, so let's go now to citizen comments, item 1.1 on our agenda today. Courtney, how many citizen comments do we have?
We have one from Faith Shockey.
Okay, so we will, at council, as you'll recall, in our modified digital world, those citizen comments for work session, which are specific to the items on work session, and that would be the items that we're going to have tonight, which is the only item on our regular agenda tonight, or items 7.1 and 7.2. That's what citizen comments for this piece are about. We will have a citizen comments tonight in regular session for those that might want to comment on items other than 7.1 and 7.2, so things that would be on the consent agenda. Okay, so rules apply. 3 minutes worth of comments, and I'll turn it over, Courtney, to you. Thank you.
Okay, this is again from Faith Shockey. I'm reaching out regarding the discussion of masks in public. While I can't attempt to understand the thought process behind requiring citizens to mask, I believe it is an overreach on our liberties and has no real data to support infringing on our civil rights to choose what we wear in public. Though the argument can be made that it helps deflect droplets from spreading when we cough or sneeze, the same could be said if we simply cough or sneeze into our elbow, as we have been taught and practiced since our childhood. I have specifically asked my grandfather, who works in infectious disease, as well as multiple local doctors, about the effectiveness of wearing masks in regard to COVID-19. And all of them have said unanimously that the masks don't work to mitigate the spread, as has been pushed by the media. I personally believe the push to wear masks is more founded in the psychological purpose of giving physical representation to the virus we cannot see, to further perpetuate the hysteria. Requiring citizens to wear masks when they would otherwise choose not to is a violation of personal civil liberties and freedom. I personally do not believe they are necessary. There are others who will not go into public if forced to wear them because of the claustrophobia, and still others who are simply uncomfortable around people wearing masks. I believe the economic and mental anguish already ensued upon our communities has gone far enough. To further push unnecessary and unproven mitigation efforts on the population will have even more long-term repercussions on our economy, mental and emotional health, and our trust in our local and federal government. There are thousands of citizens who do openly choose to wear masks already. I'm asking for my family and thousands of others to not approach this by mandate or requirement, but simply give us the real data-based facts and allow us to decide for ourselves whether we think it is best to wear masks or not, and instill in us a renewed sense of confidence that this situation has not been taken too far out of hand by our elected officials. Thank you for your time, Faith Shockey. Mayor, you're muted.
Thank you. Thank you very much for reading that, Courtney. That concludes our citizen comments. We'll move now to item 1.3 on our agenda, and I will turn it over to Mr. Atkinson. And I would encourage everyone to mute their lines except for Mr. Atkinson. And then when you have a question or something, unmute, and I'll be looking and try to make sure I call on you. Mr. Atkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. Good to see everybody. I will begin today by going quickly over the governor's new order. So this is GA 18. Of course, GA 18 was announced yesterday afternoon at 2:30. If anybody is following along, I will start on page 3, and I'm just going to hit a few of the high points. At the top of page 3, and this is where we talk about gatherings, the governor notes that every person in Texas shall, except where necessary to provide or obtain essential services or reopened services, minimize social gatherings, and minimize in-person contact with people who are not in the same household. That language was in the prior order and was largely in the order before that. There's a new addition, and I think it speaks to many of the discussions that have been held over the last few weeks. Specifically, the order calls out that people over the age of 65 are strongly encouraged to stay at home as much as possible, to maintain distance from any member of the household who has been out of the residence in the previous 14 days, and if leaving the home, to implement social distancing, good hygiene, environmental cleanliness, and sanitation. Moving on, I think reopened services are really kind of the relevant part of this. And I'll go through what the governor has called as reopened services. Note that these all begin, they start at 12:01 a.m. Friday, May 1st. So this Friday morning, as soon as we roll past midnight, these are now the reopened services. First, in-store retail services at up to 25% of the listed occupancy of the retail establishment. Second, dine-in restaurant services, also still subject to the stated 25% of the total listed occupancy of the restaurant. Now, there is a call out here, and that call out notes that this is only restaurants that have less than 51% of their gross receipts from the sale of alcoholic beverages. So the 51% rule, what we think of as a traditional bar, would be over the 51% and is not included. But again, dine-in restaurant services. The third, movie theaters that operated up to 25% of the total listed occupancy of an individual theater. So if you have a 4-plex or a 6-plex, each stands on its own. Shopping malls operated up to 25% of the total occupancy. However, food courts, play areas, and interactive displays and settings remain closed. Food can be sold. The food court, the dining area, is what is closed. Museums and libraries may open and operated up to 25% of the total occupancy. There's an interesting nod here for those counties that have 5 or fewer cases, and there are a number of those in Texas. Counties that have 5 or fewer may file what is called an attestation with the Department of State Health Services. The rules we covered just a moment ago apply, with the exception of 25% is changed to 50%. The next, and this is now on the top of page 4, services provided by an individual working alone in an office. So on this one, you really have to jump into the book that is Open Texas, and it gives you a little bit of hint of what this is. This is not saying a front door, a single office, and nobody else. This is talking about an office setting in which the individuals have individual offices. Now, I would remind council, we have had essential services open for a long time. The majority of your professional services are included in the essential service category. This does not affect them. This is an attempt to open offices that were not previously declared an essential service, provided that those individuals are working in an individual office. Golf course operations comes up next. Local government operations that include county and municipal government, but it's specific to permitting, recordation, and document filing services. Of course, we maintained those all throughout here at the city. We continue to maintain them. So this is a nod to those others. The final call out are such additional services as the governor may declare by a future order or proclamation. Now, you take all that, and that simply says that 12:01 a.m. Friday, all of those items we discussed are open, subject to those limits, generally the 25% for the individual office. Question could be asked, what about areas that may not be on the backside of the curve as it relates to the disease? You find that one step down from there, and it says the governor may, by proclamation, identify any county or counties in which reopened services are thereafter prohibited. So what this speaks to us, if you have a county in which the case counts maybe are climbing, they're moving the wrong direction, the only way for those reopened services not to reopen will be for the governor to call out county A, B, or C and say, I have put the pause button on those reopened services. We'll illustrate in a minute where Lubbock County stands, city of Lubbock. I don't feel we're anywhere close to being there, but that's out there. When you move farther down in here, there was a very specific call out and discussion about face masks as the governor went through his call. The announcement for that in the order is individuals are encouraged to wear appropriate face coverings, but no jurisdiction can impose a civil or a criminal penalty for failure to wear a face covering. So that is explicitly stated in the order. Moving down, religious services, of course, are still open. They should be conducted in accordance with guidance issued by the Attorney General and the governor. Those are posted in public. The governor maintains a list of services that will not or cannot open under his order. People shall avoid visiting bars, gyms, public swimming pools, interactive amusement venues, such as bowling alleys and video arcades, massage establishments, tattoo studios, piercing studios, or cosmetology salons. So that is similar to what's been in there before. Of course, restaurants have come out, bars have remained in. The swimming pools, the interactive venues, those are defined possibly a little better than what they were before. Probably to conclude, would note that there's one very important statement in here. As we talk about those reopened services and those conditions and those limits, 25% individual alone in an office. The order states that conditions and limitations set forth above for reopened services shall not apply to essential services. So those businesses included in the CISA guidelines, that's still the operative, they do not have occupancy limits or restrictions upon them. And I believe at the moment, the sense of where we stand with guidance from others and of course from folks in-house is it means what it says. We cannot, as the city of Lubbock, impose such restrictions on essential services. So that's a very brief summary of that. Again, council, I know each of you have that document. For those that are watching or listening to us, GA18 and the book Open Texas are posted on our city website. That's mylubbock.us/COVID-19. So anybody that would like to see those can get to them. Mayor and council, for my next topic, I'm going to speak briefly to a report that I received today on the Support Lubbock Fund. This, of course, was approved by council at your prior meeting. This is the $2 million fund. It's $1 million from Lubbock Economic Development Alliance, $1 million from Market Lubbock, Inc. It's being administered by the South Plains Association of Government. As of this morning, here's the update on the disposition of those $2 million in loan funds. Since April the 22nd, there have been between 300 and 400 inquiries of the program. 91 of those businesses that began that inquiry process moved forward. As those 91 took themselves through the process, 57 of the 91 completed the applications. So at the moment, SPAG is sitting on 57 complete applications. Tomorrow, Wednesday, is the first loan committee meeting. 20 of the 57 will go to loan committee tomorrow. Those 20 represent a request of approximately $700,000 if they were all funded, or an average of $35,000 each. There will be a second loan committee meeting on Friday, and then a third one next week. The 57 applications mentioned above represent all $2 million of the funding, and SPAG has also kept 10 applications that are complete that are kind of the next step. So if any of these first fall out or they don't complete the process, there are complete applications ready to go behind them. Per SPAG, they estimate the entire $2 million will have been loaned and wired out by mid-May. Of course, some will begin before that, but they estimate they'll be done. The fund will be spent out. We'll speak real quickly to the tiers. If you'll recall, the program was set up based on a business's gross income. So the first category was gross income of $100,000 up to $500,000. That category is eligible for up to a $20,000 loan. 23 of your 57 applications fit into that category. 23. Your second category is over $500,000 up to $2.5 million. This category is eligible for up to $40,000, and there are 29. 29 of the 57 are in that category there. The third, the largest category, is over $2.5 million up to $5 million. That category is eligible for up to $60,000 in the loan. And of your 57 applications, 5 applications are within that largest category. The only other note that went with that is that at this time, so I'm talking all 3 categories, all but one of the applicant has asked for the maximum that they're allowed based on their tier or their category. So that fund has moved quickly. We think, again, it's fully subscribed, and those dollars will have been provided to these businesses by mid-May. So with that, Mayor, I don't know if you wish me to stop for questions or go through to the end and pause. Mayor, you're on mute.
Thanks, Mr. Atkinson. We've got about 10 more minutes for this. So why don't you go on through and show your health slides, and then we'll do Q&A at the end.
Absolutely. Thank
you. Is that what you have left?
Give you the testing numbers.
Yep, please.
We'll show you the slides. Okay, testing. Lubbock continues to maintain a testing rate 2 times the state average. As of yesterday evening, there have been 6,615 tests administered in Lubbock. Our testing rate is growing at about 270 tests per day. We do expect that to move up faster. The Walmart drive-up clinic at 114th and Quaker did open Friday. You'll see us and Walmart both begin to push some more public announcements on that. I think, even more exciting for us, the city's own testing site will open tomorrow at your Patterson Library. And Councilman Chidas, I want to thank you for your assistance with some of our PSAs on that. Here's how the Patterson tests will work. Our drive-up site at Patterson will be open 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. We're going to start on Wednesday, but we'll roll it around to all 3 days. It is by appointment. It's by appointment. Anybody who wishes to make an appointment can do so by calling the health department, 775-2933, 775-2933. They will get you set up. They will take care of a lot of your pre-screening. The idea is when you pull into that testing site, it's been pre-cleared. The majority of your paperwork is done, and we're ready to get you the test. Now, very importantly, there is no cost. There is no cost to be tested at this site. If you have insurance, we will ask for your insurance and we will bill the carrier. We will not charge anything that's remaining. If you do not have health insurance, if you don't have it, there is no charge of any sorts. If you get qualified for this test, we want you to have that test. There will be no follow-up billings. Nobody will ask for $1 when you pull up or anything else. So again, we open tomorrow, 1 p.m. A lot of work is taking place out in the parking lot and inside in the conference room. And we're really ready to get that site up and going. With that, if you'll grant me just a quick moment's patience, I'm going to attempt to flip to the data screens. Okay, and if this is working right, there should be a pie chart on your screen. COVID cases by race and ethnicity.
You're good. You're good. You're good. Yes.
Okay. We'll walk quickly through these, Council. We had these available a week or so ago. These are updated as of yesterday evening. So slide 1 does show you the cases by race and ethnicity. This is countywide. This is countywide. I'll move to the next slide. This slide displaying, unfortunately, the deaths within the community. These are displayed by sex and by age. I don't think it's difficult on that to see what has become the common knowledge. COVID-19 has its most severe effects on those populations that are a bit older. And in fact, if you look at the chart for Lubbock, there have been no deaths below the category that includes the ages of 50 to 59. No deaths. Moving to the next. This is our death count by race and ethnicity. And you see the layout there. That is relatively similar to the demographic of the community. It is not exact, but it is similar. We continue to update our geographic data. So the slide you have before you here, and do note that the only way to plot this is based on the home zip code. So this is not indicative of where it might have been contracted. It is indicative of where the infected individual lives. So this one is all cases. This is the totality of your count. You can see that in terms of residency, the two zip codes that have been hit the worst are 79424 and 79416. So that's southwest and northwest part of the city. But again, these are plotted to the full extent of the county, and those zip codes continue out across the county lines for that. I'm going to go to community acquired. So same geographic data, but this is only the subset that have community acquired cases. And of course, community acquired means we can't identify the particular source of infection. So again, you're plotted by zip code. You see that 424 still remains the one that seems to have the most folks residing in it that have a community acquired case. 2316 also high, and then as those blues get lighter, you see how that carries out. The interesting thing you'll see on these charts, if you look at 79401 right in the center of Lubbock, that's largely your Texas Tech University campus. And of course, there are no residents on the campus at this time and have not been for several weeks. The council, we've talked about looking at 3 metrics that are very key to what we need to see to reopen Lubbock safely. This is the first. This is your active cases by day. And so we're not plotting the total. We're taking the total less the recovered cases and less any unfortunate losses to death. What you see here is that line is pretty flat. And it's been pretty flat going back really to about the 15th of April. So we've had not a significant incline from the 15th to the 18th. And then from the 18th forwards, you see that we've maintained a very flat line of active cases. So that is the total load in the community that's being managed. Let's move to the next. This is new cases. So this is new cases per day. And if you'll recall, going back to April 11th, we had 3 days that had some pretty large reports. 3 days that were centered up around 35 cases per day. Carrying out, though, when we get back onto the 17th of April, you'll see that we've not had a single day over 15. And in fact, we've had 4 of those cases that were 4 of those days that were 7 cases or less per day. So your new cases per day have definitely trended downward. The line is jagged because it points by day and it's not smoothed, but we've definitely trended downward. And I think it's always important to note that this is not because of reduced testing. We have added testing capacity. We have added cumulative tests each and every day, yet the portion of those coming back positive continues to decline. So we suggest this one is also positive information. Look at the third one. And really this even shows up in GA 18 when you get to the part about the counties that can attest to the 5 or fewer cases. Part of their attestation is looking at hospital capacity. So that's what you see here is hospital capacity. The blue line across the bottom represents the number of hospitalized COVID-19 patients in your Lubbock hospitals. And that line is also very flat. That line has traded in a very, very narrow range all the way back through the 7th of April. It's going to center up around 31 at any point in time that are hospitalized in our 2 big systems here. The line at the top, the orange line, that's your hospital capacity. It's not the total number of beds. It's the beds minus what's being used. And you see that we've maintained a delta that was greater than 650 beds until we walked through to April the 26th. And you see the capacity line has trended down slightly. It did not trend down because of an increase in COVID patients. If you look at the bottom, that's flat. What you're seeing are the hospitals now having the ability to move back into certain types of the elective procedures, which will occupy beds. It will. But even in that case, you're still working on a delta of roughly 550 beds available in the community. We update this chart every day as well. Of course, it's posted on the website. It had fallen off, but it's back and it will stay on the website. So taken collectively, these last 3 slides, Council, we feel like those present a very fair snapshot of where we stand within our community here in Lubbock related to the COVID-19. The testing continues to go at 2 times the state average, and that's just going to do nothing but grow, especially when Patterson comes online tomorrow. So with that, Mayor, I'll stop and take a moment of questions if we have time. If not, I'll introduce your next topic.
Let's go ahead. Let's why don't you, thank you for unsharing your screen. Let's try to do some brief questions and then we'll move on to the next piece. So I'll open the floor for questions. Council, Mr. Chidis, looks like you may be unmuted. Are you ready to go?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Atkinson, I don't know about the possibility, but on the pie chart that you were showing, is there a way, I'm sure there is, to start sharing information of the senior living, a section on that pie chart, without invading privacy?
That is an excellent question, and I will pose that tomorrow morning and see if we can do that. As long as the data sets are large enough and are blurred enough that you can't identify individuals, I would think that we can. So
yes, sir. All I'm asking for is just a general number. You know, of the 206 Hispanics, how many of those, well, were out of the senior living? The 191 of the white, how many were senior living? 33 black, how many were from the senior living? I don't know if we can get down to that kind of detail. On the, yes, sir.
I'll be glad to run that. I do want to note, of course, that will make each of those pieces smaller. But that
Yes.
unknown category, at some point, as we get more and more tight, that unknown category starts to skew the data more.
Yes, it does. Second question, you mentioned cosmetology studios. They will be open?
Cosmetology salons, so
Salons, yeah.
anything related to the hair care is explicitly stated as closed in GA 18.
Okay, just again, just a point of clarification for the cosmetologists, barbers that are out there, information for them. Again, would you repeat the date up until the 18th? I'm sorry, what was the date on that?
Governor Abbott yesterday in his press conference indicated that the target date for phase 2, which we presume includes those things that are called out as closed now, the target date for that was May 18th.
1/8?
1/8. Yes, sir. 1/8.
Okay, 1/8. Okay. Thank you.
However, I would add to that, Mr. Chavez, he suggested that as 1/8, but his order is only effective through the 15th, which is 2 weeks from Friday. So it contemplates him doing something between now and then.
Okay, and the reason I bring that up, they're a big part of the community, as all small businesses are. But I've been receiving quite a few calls from the barbers, cosmetology people. They want to start working, but again, let's see what the Economic Task Force has to say about it also. Looking forward to it. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chavez. Mr. Christian.
Yes, sir. I have a question back onto your original information about new rules and regulations. And I just wanted a clarification in regards to the rules that are now applying to essential businesses versus those rules that are applying to what you called reopened businesses. What's the difference? It almost sounds like essential businesses can do pretty much whatever they want in regards to capacity. Would that be a fair assessment of what you said? For example, a Walmart or other stores, they can have as many people in their stores as they would like. Is that correct?
That does appear to be what it says, yes.
Okay, so we still have, in essence, we still have a set of rules for essential, and then we have a set of rules for what we're calling reopen, or I'm going to even call them what they were prior to this time, is non-essential. Would that be a fair assessment of that statement?
I think it would. I would make one note. GA 18 references back to the presidential and the CDC callouts. Okay. Those callouts quite explicitly do state you have to maintain social distance, you have to maintain good hygiene and those types. In fact, the presidential guidelines, and it doesn't apply to a retail, but as it applies to a gathering, still call out 10 as a number for gatherings. So the best interpretation we can give you at this moment, essential services will have whatever limits Lubbock or any other community may have put on them. So here, our large home improvement stores have a limit of 100 exclusive of employees, 100. 12:01 a.m. this Friday, that limit no longer applies. However, they are still subject to maintaining the social distance and the good hygiene practices and so forth. But outside of that, we don't read that there's a local authority to do anything different.
So we won't have lines in front of our building supply stores or those others that fall under the category of essential businesses. And I'm making a broad statement, but that's pretty much what's going to happen come Friday.
Not necessarily. I mean, they could choose to limit their own occupancy. We hope that they'll be responsible. We have a call with them tomorrow. We've invited them to it. Mr. Massingill's invited to a phone call to try to talk through that. We will very much enforce the social distancing piece. And if they're not taking care of the inside of their stores, the store manager runs a risk of being cited for that. We can't let the progress we've made on this be blown away by 5 or 6 big stores in this community and we think they'll be good citizens, and we certainly hope they will be.
But at the end of the day, they can have as many people in their store as possible, as allowable. But they
Yep,
still have to social distance.
That's not what the governor said yesterday, but that's what his order says. And you can take that up with the governor if you feel like me and find there'd be conflict there. Because he called out what a good job HEB and Home Depot were doing specifically. Y'all watched the press conference just like I did. But when you read his order, that's not what it says.
Gotcha.
All right. One thing I would mention is that we're updating our data slides daily. As citizens want to know about that, please send them to our website. They're much more accurate than the state website. If you look on their website for our testing data, it shows us at about half the number of tests that we've done. I'm not sure where they're getting that information, but it's not correct. Ours is updated on a daily basis, and we will continue to do that. Mr. Griffith.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Atkinson, would you mind repeating the new test site location and the telephone number again, please, so everybody can hopefully write that down?
Absolutely. Thank you. Patterson Library, which is located at 1836 Parkway Drive. 1836 Parkway Drive. That site will be open Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 1 p.m. to 6 p.m. If demand requires, we'll extend those hours or add days. But we're going to open tomorrow, 1 p.m. to 6 p.m., Monday, Wednesday, Friday. You do need to have an appointment. You gain that by calling the health department. 775-2933. 775-2933. This has all gone out publicly through a press release. It's going to be posted on our sites. We'll push it on social. And again, the final piece of this site, there is no cost. There is no cost to be tested. If you have health insurance, we will bill the health insurance. If it doesn't pay or comes back with a gap, you're not billed. If you do not have health insurance, there is no cost. We will not ask you for $1. Okay, and you will not be billed later. We want you to come to this site, but we need you to call 775-2933 first.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move on to item 1.2. It's certainly related to this, and any question that you might have from 1.3 that you didn't get to ask, we could ask it.
Mayor,
on
Ms. Patterson Harris had her hand up.
I'm sorry, Sheila.
I have mine up, but I can wait.
Ms.
I had a couple things. Number one, I just want to say thank you for the Patterson Branch test site. I am hoping that we'll be able to really get some folks that are in need of being tested, in addition to the piece that is no charge. I think is a big plus for me. I'm glad that you answered that question that I was going to ask Mr. Atkinson regarding pushing that information out. I know that we have the basic information on the health department website through the COVID-19. Having something that's going to go out a little bit tighter, I think is really going to be beneficial. I have a question with regard to the movie theaters and the 25% of occupancy. And with the understanding that there are up to 16 different theaters, separate theaters. Are we talking about 25% of the total building's capacity? Or are we talking about 25%? Are we only going to limit 25% per each theater? Because if we're looking at the facility, everybody may go want to see one movie and know that means no one else will be allowed to see something else. Not to say that I think it's a good idea to even have folks go to the movie or have folks rush there. I'm just curious as to how we'll monitor that, or that's actually going to be set up.
Okay, so if you'll allow me, I want to read this one again verbatim. Movie theaters that operate at up to 25% of the total listed occupancy of any individual theater for any screening. So if you have 4 theaters side by side, a fourplex, each one of which was originally rated for 100 people to sit in there, each of those individual 4 will have 25 people. You don't get to put 100 in room 1 and then have 0 in 2, 3, and 4.
Yeah, I think I missed that when I was looking at it, and when I was listening, I think I was holding on to what I thought I saw before. So thanks for clarifying that. That just bothered me. Well, there's a lot of stuff with this that bothers me, but we'll keep moving forward. Thanks for the information.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I think Ms. Joyce said she would wait till our, the next
You
piece.
want
I
me
know
to
we'll
wait?
have time.
It doesn't matter.
Okay, let's just, if you don't mind, let's do that. Well, I think once we hear from the task force, that we'll have a more robust discussion both here and then we'll post it for executive session too.
Well, this is really about 79416.
Okay, please. Okay, go ahead. Okay.
Because 79416 is in my district. And I want people to know that is related to the nursing home situation. So I don't want everybody to get scared and go running in different directions. That was a very unique situation where we discovered some issues there. So we're okay. The other one I thought was kind of funny, 79424, is that district where we have the annexation wiggles, as I call them. I don't know if the people who live outside the city within 424 are the reason for that. I don't know, but I thought it was kind of interesting. And the last thing is I have had someone to tell me that when Mr. Atkinson announced that we were making our hand sanitizer in one of our city departments, that they thought that all of us were using that. And I wanted him to repeat who's using the hand sanitizer that's made by one of us. Bless you.
Thank you. And yes, ma'am. And I think I've got the exact numbers. I believe that we have made 6 liters of that product. It is being made by your labs that process our water and our wastewater tests, so the full-blown chemical labs. All but 2 of those liters are actually out at the EOC. So that facility continues to run 7 days a week. It has now for more than 6 weeks, and there's not yet an end in sight. Putting that out there, that's where I've got the largest group in a single space. That's also a group that we're not allowing new folks into it or folks to come out of it. We're keeping it contained with where it is. And we're using that product there. I think there are 2 bottles of that product here in City Hall. What's our logic behind doing that? If we can use our own product, anything else that's available, whether it comes in through the emergency management process or it's available in the market, we're not consuming it. It's available for others to use. And I've not given, none of it has gone out to anywhere other than those 2 locations.
Thank you. Nice clarification. And I think Ms. Joyce's point about the zip codes is is interesting too, because if you think about it, 03, 04, 07, 15, 16, 23, and 24 all go well outside the city limits. So it's not just the city. I mean, 23 and 24 and 07 go all the way to the county lines, both to 23 and 24 to the south, 07 to the west. So just where it's all on our website, you can look at it, but that's a very, very valid point. Okay, let's move on to item 1-2 in executive session. Mr. Atkinson.
Certainly, Mayor, and if I might offer just a simple clarification, we're going to still stay in work session. It'll be 1.2 work session. I want to introduce Councilman.
Duly noted. Wrong language.
Thank you. I want to introduce Councilman Steve Massengale. Councilman Massengale is one of your 2 co-chairs of the Lubbock Economic Recovery Task Force. This next presentation will be the results that group has put forth, and it's been, I think somebody said it this morning, and I'll agree. I have never seen a community task force move so fast and do such good work in such a close period of time. With that, Mr. Massengale, I see you're unmuted. Mr. Yearwood, if you would promote the two panelists, that would be co-chair Robert Taylor and subcommittee chair, Mr. Dave Marcinkowski. Do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Atkinson. I'm going to pause here. I'd like to get Robert Taylor and Dave Marcinkowski on the screen before I make my comments. So if they could get promoted, please. There's Dave and there's Robert. Okay. Again, Mr. Atkinson, thank you. And thank you for the information that you shared with us earlier. We're all ready for a little bit of good news. I'll just want to make some brief comments. Before I talk about the task force, I want to talk about and just thank the city staff. The amount of work that we've done over the past few days and the things that we've dealt with over the past few weeks. You know, when we needed somebody to jump, there was not anybody there to ask how high. They just jumped as high as they could. And Jarrett and his team have put in countless hours supporting the efforts of the mayor and the council. And, you know, I can't thank everyone enough for what they've done. The task force, 22 people from our community, with the leadership of my co-chair, Robert Taylor. We first met on April 20th. This is a group of people from our community that represent a very broad base of businesses and organizations. They bring a lot of ability, mental ability, and they understand how to innovate. They also understand how to move fast and make decisions. And we've done just that. The work we've done over the week and a few days feels like, Robert and Dave probably agree, it feels like we've been working on this for six weeks or something, but it's only been a week and a few days. I counted up, we've already had 12 meetings, hundreds of man hours, and lots of Zoom. I think we all look forward to having face-to-face meetings again. Countless revisions this group went through. I think we all wished we had a crystal ball as to what Austin was thinking, and we'll get into that. As you can see, we probably didn't. One thing that was clear, though, is this group was laser focused on getting Lubbock back to work. Bottom line, doing everything they could to get Lubbock back to work and find a plan that would balance, as we've talked about many times. I think the mayor said it first, lives and livelihoods. I've never seen in all my community experience a group work so efficiently. It'll definitely go down as one of my prouder moments working with folks in Lubbock, Texas. I think the council will be pleased with the work as we communicate the plan. Mr. Marcinkowski is going to go through the highlights and understand how we've made a decision to pivot in light of the governor's order, but I look forward to him sharing it with you. Mr. Taylor, I'll kick it to you before we ask Dave to go through the slides.
Okay, thanks, Steve. I'd like to thank Steve. He did a lot of heavy lifting on this committee and this task force, and I think that's why we came out with what we thought was a pretty good plan. If you look back at the state's plan, it says in there many times it set a minimum standard with minimum protocol. And I believe that to be true. Our Lubbock plan outline was built to put several more people back to work and really gave, I think, best practice guidance for we could have a successful reopening. It was a very diverse committee. There was a lot of people that had a lot of opinions and everybody got to voice them. We had a lot of experts. We did reach out to many local groups. We also reached out to many local business people, and we had a lot of research material backing up and giving us support for what we put together. I think the committee is now thankfully ongoing. I don't think it's a one and done deal. We still have the educational component that has yet to meet. And I think probably with this committee and with this task force, comes a communication piece that we built around meet best safe practices. I think it's built to reach out to our citizens as well as business owners. And as hopefully we can impact behavior and build even more chance of success. The key to the goal is to mitigate the growth of the coronavirus while returning as many citizens as possible and as safely to work. It's important for us to stay focused on what we need to do and control the virus. It's just one step. This is an ongoing process. So this is just step one to the successful returning to work of citizens of Lubbock. And it depends on our citizens and our business owners' self-discipline. It was encouraging to see how many people are so bought in to Lubbock and how many people are giving of themselves so we can get Lubbock and the citizens back to where they need to be. One of those I'm going to turn over to Dave Markowski. He took on this task of our little subcommittee to put together the details for a very, very well thought out, I think, successful plan to get us back to work. When we monitored, had to make some changes to accommodate the governor, but I think we did that in a good fashion also. So Dave?
Thanks, Robert. Thanks, Steve. Appreciate your time. Appreciate everybody's time. Thank you for this opportunity to present the work that we did. I want to start off by kind of echoing a few comments that were made. This group, I've been a part of a lot of volunteer groups in my life, and I've never been a part of a group that has been so committed and so passionate, putting the best interests of our city way above any personal interests. And that was to a person. It was a very exciting group to work with. And I think, with the work that we have completed, we're all very proud of it. I think it's worth noting that, for us, the most important thing was the health and safety of Lubbock. But we believe very strongly that our economy is a big part of that health and safety. And so we had really engaging debates from the medical group to the business group, and everybody was respectful. Everybody was understanding of both sides. Everybody realized this is not, we're kind of rewriting a playbook. And there are so many things that go into it. This is such a complex situation we find ourselves in, and there aren't any easy answers. And so that's why I think it was so critical for us to have this group, and my thanks go out to everybody who's on this task force. I look forward to working with them as we move through this and get Lubbock through this crisis. For us, it was about, a big piece of this was getting employees back to work. And I know that's what we all want. The governor's order yesterday, I can't imagine the challenges when you look at a state as large as Texas and as diverse as we are, how you can come out with, an umbrella of guidance like he did with GA 18 and his other two executive orders. And we know Lubbock was well represented by Mark McDougall and Carla Moran on that group. And the work that they did is truly, I can't imagine all that they've accomplished the last week to get the governor to a point that he was yesterday. That being said, with all due respect, I think our task force was hoping for something more in terms of opening Lubbock. I mean, Lubbock is one community of many in the state of Texas, and we think, we have a different set of circumstances. And so I'm in the unique position to be able to share this with you. I'm also going to share with you some of the differences, because I think it's important for our citizens and for you as our city council to understand that where we were at 2:00 yesterday is not where we find ourselves at 3:00 today. And not that we're criticizing the governor. We understand his challenges. At the same time, there's a lot of folks we were hoping to get back to work this week. That being said, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Yeah, go ahead.
Started here. Mark, could we bring up the slide deck, please? All right, Dave, these should roll along with, hopefully you've seen this, but
yeah,
that gives you the slide deck as we walk through it. So,
And
Okay.
I've got my notes from this, and so hopefully everything I cover lines up with the slides, but we'll obviously take questions towards the end. And so, real quick acknowledgement, both during this process, and specifically as it relates to this Lubbock Safe program, Jared and his team have done amazing work. They have been available to us whenever needed. They have gone above and beyond repeatedly. And I think this is a great example of it. So I'm happy to introduce I would guess the sugar of this conversation, which is the Lubbock Safe program. It's a voluntary certification program for Lubbock businesses. What they've created is a portal that'll be open hopefully sometime tomorrow, definitely before May 1st, when we're hoping to put this program in place. But what this is an ability for our businesses to go online and self-certify themselves to our list of requirements or guidelines that we're going to be sharing here during this meeting. And if they go through that process, they self-certify, they're going to follow that. Jared has assembled a team of his staff who will go out and actually present stickers similar. Can we go back to slide 1? That look just like this video image that when it comes up, that they can display in their window to kind of acknowledge that they're Lubbock Safe, meeting the guidelines that came from the recommendation of our task force. So our hope is the City Council, approves these guidelines, and if so, it takes effect in locking step with the governor's order of 12:01 a.m. Friday, May 1st. It's important to note, licensed or regulated businesses must follow the guidelines set forth by their relevant regulatory entity. Nothing in the Lubbock Safe guidelines supersedes, replaces, or excuses regulatory compliance. So what we did is we broke this thing up, and our initial area is general health and safety guidelines. These guidelines will apply to all categories of businesses, and with few exceptions, and those exceptions will be broken out by category that we'll show you as we move through each individual category. These go to the degree of go ahead, Steve.
Well, I'm sorry. I was just making sure the slide deck was working. My apologies. It is now. Okay.
So can we move to the next slide, please? And so this kind of covers what I just said, which is these are general safety, health and safety guidelines for all businesses. All exceptions and additions are noted in the following different sections by category. And so I'm going to quickly go through those with everyone on this video call. We are, as a group, recommending that hand sanitizers or hand sanitizer stations should be placed near every entrance of every business. Touchless preferred. So, you could have a Perel bottle next to the front door on a table, and that would accommodate this request. Where I'm going to have a problem with today, I'm going to ask Steve and Robert to and Latrell, and I want to thank Latrell too for her service on our task force. I'm going to have a really hard time because there's lots of places we initially used the word must that we're now having to use the word should. And so for the last week, we've been must. This is an opportunity. This is an area where we were trying to require hand sanitizer stations was our thought process. And now we're saying they should be placed. This is all based off of the governor's executive order. Face coverings are strongly recommended for all employees and for all customers entering any business. Now, there are going to be some exceptions when we get to restaurants and warehousing where face coverings, we are requesting those to be required of employees, not patrons. But in general, we're strongly recommending, and at the end of my presentation, we're going to share some PSAs that our communications group has put together that the community is going to, all of the mediums that are out there, media mediums that are out there are going to be sharing going forward, because we do feel it is extremely important for Lubbock to understand that we are in the middle of a crisis and we do need to take this extremely seriously. And, we believe strongly, it's been proven that face coverings help. We also believe in the liberties of our country, like that were shared earlier in this meeting. And so we are simply strongly recommending for all customers and employees to wear face masks. We want to reiterate the fact that at-risk people, those with pre-existing health conditions that COVID-19 has a tendency of causing real problems with, or our citizens over the age of 65, to please still stay home as much as possible. We're asking for our businesses to put up signage and notifications to customers that strongly encourage this, that at-risk populations take all precautions to protect themselves from contracting COVID-19. I think that's critical for us as we move forward, because it's not just our at-risk folks who need to protect themselves. It is everybody else who needs to do the right thing as we move forward to also protect our at-risk population. This is not limited to just one group. This is a whole community coming together. Typical practice: 6-foot social distancing protocols throughout businesses for everyone from customers to employees. All employees need to be trained on appropriate cleaning and disinfection protocols, hand sanitizing, and respiratory etiquette. Employees, including volunteers, and I think that's important to note for our places of worship when we get to that. This is anybody who is helping, both paid and unpaid, should use hand sanitizers or wash their hands upon entering the place of work. We strongly recommend that employees use hand sanitizer or wash their hands between customers as well. Can I go on the next slide? Cashiers are strongly encouraged to use hand sanitizer or wash their hands between each customers for sure. We're also asking for a barrier to be placed between the cashier and the customers. I think we've seen this at stores and restaurants. It may be something as simple as a couple of chairs or a small table, but to create a little bit more of a distance gap to ensure that 6-foot social distancing when people are cashing out. Can you go back, please? I think we got a couple more quick ones to go over there that are important. Forehead temperature scan and health survey of all employees, including volunteers, to be taken prior to every shift. And anybody who fails, actually answers affirmatively to any of the health survey questions that our medical committee is providing, or has a temperature in excess of 100 degrees, needs to go home. And if you read the governor's guidance in his book yesterday, it goes on to say when they can come back to work, and we endorse that for sure. We realize that it may be difficult at this time to get a forehead temperature thermometer. And so we're asking, we're telling businesses to please use the health survey until you're able to get forehead thermometers. But our hope is that our businesses take that seriously enough to understand that we're asking for all businesses in time, in a very short period of time, to acquire forehead thermometers to be able to take the temperature of their employees and volunteers. Next slide, please. Touchless payment options should be encouraged. Frequently used work areas should be sanitized and cleaned every 30 minutes, like we've seen at like Market Street and other places. And then required signage, directional distance, markings on floor, employee sanitation guidelines, etc., be posted. I think Jared and his team are working through some signage to help our businesses out that we can offer as a supplement to this guidance. And businesses should take affirmative steps to comply with all, like we talked earlier, all public health regulations, sanitation guidelines, codes applicable to your industry. Stopping with this particular category for just a second, I will say, because I really want to stress this, it was our task force desire prior to the governor's announcement that all employees across Lubbock be required to wear face masks. We felt that was the right thing to do. We understand where the governor's coming from, and again, we support him. But we think it's important for everyone who's watching this to understand that our hope was to really to give guidance to our employers and our employees to create the safest environment possible as patrons began to frequent their establishments. Closed shopping malls, so South Plains malls and the like. We've got a few additional guidelines from our general health and safety guidelines that I want to share now. Per the governor's order, it's 25% occupancy limit for the enclosed common area based on the fire marshal rating. Real important to note, this excludes employees of the business. This is just patrons at 25%. We have acknowledged with people close to the governor that was the intent of his desire. That being said, there is the concern that could change because it was a gray area. but we're advocating for employees to be left out of that 20% occupancy limit number. We're also asking that children under the age of 18 should be accompanied at all times by an adult parent or guardian at enclosed shopping malls. Per the governor's order, food courts, dining areas, play areas, interactive displays, and other settings which facilitate social gatherings should remain closed. Real quick, I just want to kind of give some caveats. Our initial hope was to get 50% occupancy as a task force, not 25%. But per the governor's orders, we are fully supporting his desire to start at 25%. We hope and pray that he moves that to 50% at base to May 18th. Large store, big box retail. You know, Randy, I want to kind of speak to this because your observations are correct as it relates to what we believe the governor's order is saying, which is these are potentially essential services, especially as it relates to a Walmart or a Home Depot. And this guidance, you know, kind of opens up the door if they are essential for them to have more than what we're requesting. Our hope is, though, is that the big box retailers out there who are watching this in Lubbock listen to the concept that we're trying to show here, which is based off its size. We created 3 different categories of buildings: 30 to 45,000 square foot facilities, 200 people, or limit of 25%, whichever is less. 45 to 60%, limit to 25%, or 250 people. And over 60,000 square foot facilities have an occupancy limit of 25% for the fire marshal rating, or 300 people, whichever is less. All those numbers are excluding employees. Restaurants. I believe Jared kind of went through the 51% sign as determined by TABC is what is going to determine a restaurant from a bar. Bars are not a part of phase 1. I will tell you they were a part of phase 1 with our original task force proceedings. 25% occupancy limit, excluding employees for restaurants. Minimum of 6 customers per table. We're encouraging reservations to reduce customer waiting in groups for a table to open. All valet services should be suspended except for customers whose vehicles display placards or plates for disabled parking. The typical 6-foot social distancing in waiting areas and outside sections. Self-serve buffets and stations should be avoided. Patrons should only order items from a menu. So, you know, this includes drink stations, I believe, and everything else. Customers should be given a new cup with each drink refill. So we're trying to eliminate the need for, or the possibility of people to be accessing self-serve food buffets or drink stations and potentially creating a problem there. We are asking to require face coverings for all employees in restaurants. All place settings, utensils, menus, condiments, should be single use or should be cleaned and sanitized after every customer. We're asking for only covered straws to be served. And then typical cleaning, sanitation that you would expect, and a designated manager to oversee that. Now, real quick, the other caveat that is, you know, when the government put 25%, our hope as of yesterday was for it to be at 50% as a task force. But we are on our, you know, we have changed that to 25% for the governor's orders. Non-essential medical. So your dentist, optometrist, and other non-emergency outpatient services. We heard yesterday the government opened that up with a 25% occupancy limit, excluding employees. We're asking that customers' patients should be seen by appointment only and stay in their car until they're invited in for their appointment. We're asking for customers to go through a forehead temperature scan and health survey. And if they answer affirmatively to any questions, or if they have a temperature over 100 degrees Fahrenheit, we're asking that they be sent home. We are similar to what we did with the general health and safety guidelines. We're asking people, you know, to use the health survey until they can get the proper forehead thermometers. Our hope is that they, you know, especially non-essential medical, that they can get those relatively quickly. Children under the age of 18 and special needs customers needing assistance may be accompanied by a guardian or parent during treatment. And we're strongly encouraging that those guardians or parents to wear a face mask when they go back with their child. Employees treating a client are strongly encouraged to wear both a face shield or a face mask. Employees are encouraged to wear gloves and dispose of those after every use. Work areas and equipment are to be cleaned and sanitized after each customer. Child care providers. So in a lot of cases, we were able to find guidance that helped us to craft our guidelines. And Texas Health and Human Services had guidelines that we were able to work through and for the most part take as is in terms of the guidance here. So all 4 of these items on this section really come off of the guidance provided by Texas Health and Human Services. This first item is a list of all the folks that can enter a child care facility. The next one talks about forehead temperature scans and health surveys for all people entering the facility. The same rules apply as it relates to answering affirmatively to any of the questions in the health survey or having a temperature over 100 degrees, they need to be sent home. Requiring pickup and drop off of children outside of the facility, unless there's a legitimate reason why the parent needs to be asked in. And then in terms of the food, ensure that each child is provided individual meals and snacks, just no family style meals. I think one point there, this was a big topic for us. We realized as a group early on that in order to put people from Lubbock back to work, we needed to solve the childcare provider challenge. And so, I mean, we were constantly working through, the fact that the messaging needed to be out there, that we're going to rely heavily on our childcare providers out there across the city to open up and hopefully, be able to work with and actually satisfy the need that's going to exist in our city as more people from Lubbock get back to work. Event centers, houses of worship. I'm sorry, I jumped a little bit. Houses of worship. So our churches. We got most of these guidelines from a joint letter provided by the Texas Attorney General and the Governor of Texas, and guidelines that they had set forth. There are some caveats. The first one is one of those caveats. And so we felt it was important to note to churches in Lubbock that we have an outdoor gathering category. And the rules that apply for the outdoor gathering category could make it conducive to churches to have outside services. And so we asked them to not to go look at that section and see if it applies to you. This is especially important as it relates to drive-in style services that we've seen across the country and in Lubbock as well. We're asking for childcare to remain closed unless they can meet the child care facility guidelines listed above that I just went through. We ask that attendees and for our churches to ensure that the attendees sit with their family unit or group and use social distancing between each unit, and if necessary, add more service times to facilitate social distancing. We're asking for alternate rows between attendees. That's all social distancing, common sense, I think. Clergy and or ushers should dismiss attendees by family unit or row to maintain social distancing as people exit the building. Again, I think that's common sense in terms of how we're trying to encourage social distancing. Staff should sanitize seats and frequently use surfaces between services. We're asking to refrain from passing collection plates and instead provide a central collection box in the building or encourage online giving. And then as well, consider how the sacraments can be administered without the attendees touching the same surfaces and objects. Event centers. You'll note in this document is there's an event centers. There are a number of things that would normally have been included in event centers that are part of our phase 2 per the government orders. And this one reads a little bit differently and says, if allowed by executive order GA18 or subsequent order, this section applies to businesses that provide indoor, outdoor event space and or otherwise allow for gatherings larger than those recommended by the president and the CDC, such as movie theaters, museums, and libraries that were specific to the governor's orders. But then we also have things like funeral homes in here that we're still trying to get clarification on. But our hope is funeral homes, weddings, and those kinds of things will be allowed in this guideline, and we can make that known to the public as soon as we have clarification. Same rules apply, 25% occupancy limit. If there's food being served, we're asking for the resident guidelines to be followed. Any ticket sales should occur online and not at the box office. So if you're going to the movies, make sure you buy your ticket before you go online. Strict social distancing needs to occur or should occur while seating. For rows that are not 6 feet deep, every other row should be used. Customers should sit with their party, and they should be 6 foot separation between parties. We've seen guidance that said 2 seats in a movie theater constitutes 6 feet. Components of these businesses that have interactive functions or exhibits, including child play areas, should remain closed. If there are pictures being taken, we're asking for a dedicated area that is cleaned, if applicable, between each group being photographed. A dedicated area at least 6 feet from customer seats should be provided for any speakers, presenters, facilitators, or the like. And then, of course, all chairs, tables, equipment should be cleaned and sanitized after each event or activity. Outdoor gatherings, similar to event centers. If allowed by executive order GA 18 or a subsequent order, this group will go beyond, houses of worship and whatnot, because it could include graduations, concerts, weddings, political gatherings, demonstrations, and the like. Since these were not specifically stated in GA 18, we're still looking for a little bit of guidance from the governor and his staff as to whether or not we can include them in the section. Typical social distancing guidelines are required. We felt it important to reiterate that face covering should be strongly encouraged. Food and drink should be kept in a designated area. Relevant restaurant guidelines apply to this category as it does with all the other categories that have restaurant services. Same rule as above as it relates to pictures and having a dedicated area for that can be cleaned between use. We're asking for advanced social distancing between the speakers, presenters, facilitators, and the first row of seats of 10 feet. All tables, chairs, equipment, etc. should be cleaned and sanitized before and after the event. We're asking for all trash to be cleaned up 2 hours after the event and have a manager responsible for inspecting that area to ensure everything is as clean as the area was prior to the event. And then, of course, all participants should comply with all laws and regulations of the city of Lubbock. We had some requests about outdoor farmer and flea markets, and so we put a category together for that. And it's really just, same rules apply from the outdoor event category. For this, if there's food being sold or served, then the relevant restaurant category guidelines apply. If there's goods and services being provided or sold, then the relevant non-essential retail category applies. Final group that's in our guidelines for phase 1, warehousing, distribution, and manufacturing. We received some great guidance from groups in Lubbock in this particular area. All the general health and safety guidelines apply. Employees and customers within these facilities should be able to practice social distancing at all times while doing their job. It is a critical piece to this puzzle. People need to be able to work and still practice social distancing. All key touch points should be cleaned and sanitized every 2 hours. All touch points on MHE equipment, hand trucks, etc. should be cleaned and sanitized before and after each shift or between operator changes. This is another area where we're asking that all employees wear face coverings upon entering and in all common areas. Face coverings may be removed if they're trying to utilize voice-activated equipment. Tractors, disinfectant wipes or spray should be provided to sanitize cab interior, touch points, door handles, etc. at the beginning and end of each shift. The drivers should be able to practice social distancing and wear face covering while making deliveries. Hand sanitizer should be made available for use in the cab of the truck. Now that concludes phase 1. I want to kind of quickly go through our thoughts on phase 2. Initially, personal care businesses were a part of our phase 1 offering. Obviously, the governor has asked that that be omitted, and so we moved it down to phase 2. But our hope and prayer is that things happen the way they need to in order for the government to open that up when we go to phase 2. We had fitness gyms and facilities in our phase 1 initially. And same thing, since the governor has taken those out, we moved those down to phase 2. We also had bowling alleys in our phase 1, and those got pushed back to phase 2 with the government's orders. We did have nightclubs as part of phase 2. We added bars to that per the governor's orders, but we did have bars as a part of restaurants in our initial phase 1. Public swimming pools were always a part of our phase 2. Amusement parks, arcades, and bounce houses were always a part of our phase 2. And then youth and adult team sports were always a part of our phase 2. We felt, especially with youth team sports, with the schools being closed, it was not right to be having team sports going on at that point in time. Additional areas that the governor particularly pointed out as potentially phase 2 or somewhere down the road: massage establishment, tattoo studios, piercing studios, cosmetology salons, trade schools, and those kinds of things are all omitted per governor or GA 18. I will tell you, we had those a part of phase 1 with our initial offering. And that, I think, concludes my report. Steve?
Dave, thank you so much. You did a great job. It's, as you can see, council, quite a bit of work went into this. And at this point, I'm very glad for you to see it. I'll turn it back over to the mayor and go.
Well, I want to just thanks. I texted Steve while Dave was presenting about how remarkable the detail was. I've seen a lot of reopening reports or plans in the last week. I'm not sure I've seen one. In fact, I know I've not seen one that's this well done. So Dave, Robert, Steve, Latrell, and the other 18 members of your and the experts you had along with you, you did a great job. Thank you very much for your work.
Can I say one more thing before? I mean, I did leave something out that I forgot to bring up.
Please, Dave.
Because I think this is critical. The medical committee that we had was made up of some amazing folks, and I can name them if you want, but just to give you an example of the way that we work together, because I think it's really important. Our medical group had strong feelings towards face coverings and requiring face coverings, and they had different types of facilities that they were worried about being more conducive towards the spread of COVID-19 than others that we may or may not have been including in phase 1. And, the conversation and dialogue was always very respectful. And quite frankly, I really respect and appreciated where everybody was coming from. Because again, there were no right answers. And I feel it's important for us to acknowledge specifically the medical committee. But really, we have an education committee that's made up of a great group of people, a medical committee. We have our task force, our mini committee that we had working on these guidelines, and we had another one for communication. And the work that they each did and the way that they worked together, it was truly remarkable, Mayor. And I think you should be proud of the fact that you've got dedicated citizens in this town who have such passion for our great city.
Yeah, thank you, Dave. I'd underscore that. I've said publicly before, I'll say again, that every one of these citizens that we called to ask them to serve, they said yes. And some of these are very, very busy people and have practices that in the medical profession, as an example, and you know how difficult it is for a medical professional to take time away from his or her practice to be on a committee, but willing to do that. So I'm thankful for that. And I want to point out that your work's not done. And so there's still work that's being done, and it will be very instructive to us as we move forward. Steve, before we go to comments on this, Jarrett, would you make a couple of comments about the proposed new emergency order that we'll be considering tonight? Because I think it fits. And Steve, you want to?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Mayor. Let me interject. We've got 3 short videos that we need to go to finish this presentation. And just let me, for clarification, our group broke into 4 committees. We had our medical committee that Dave referred to that were vitally important to help us make our decisions. We have an education committee. We have a communications committee, and then our Get Lubbock Open committee, which was chaired by Mr. Marcinkowski. So if you would indulge us, what we feel like is so important as we move forward with the Safe Lubbock program is communication. So with that, I'm going to let Mr. Yearwood tee up 3 PSAs that have already been produced by our communication team.
Lubbock is reopening safely. When you do your part, we can make Lubbock safe again.
I'm Michelle with Market Street. I have 3 kids and a mother with stage 4 lung cancer, so I wear a mask to do everything to protect my mother and to protect our guests. I wear my mask, you wear yours.
Keep a 6-foot distance. Wear your mask. Wash your hands. Don't let your guard down, as we can't afford to go backwards. Together, we can keep Lubbock safe and open. Lubbock is reopening safely. When you do your part, we can make Lubbock safe again.
Hey Lubbock, we're open, and our businesses are ready and excited to serve you. But remember, stay safe, and that we're in this together. So wear your masks, I'm gonna wear mine, and we can't wait to see you.
Keep a 6-foot distance. Wear your mask. Wash your hands. Don't let your guard down, as we can't afford to go backwards. Together, we can keep Lubbock safe and open. Lubbock is reopening safely. When you do your part, we can make Lubbock safe again.
It's time to open Lubbock again, and I think it's important that we do it in a responsible way to protect your family and mine. Everybody should wear their mask, keep social distancing. It's life and livelihood that keep Lubbock strong.
Keep a 6-foot distance. Wear your mask. Wash your hands. Don't let your guard down, as we can't afford to go backwards. Together, we can keep Lubbock safe and open.
Mayor, thank you. I think you see now some of the additional work that's been put in and the thoughtfulness and the importance of this as we gradually open our community.
Okay, those are fantastic. I'm hoping that maybe we can take and make one or two of those. Put them in Spanish too, so we can go to our Spanish-speaking media. I think that'd be a great opportunity for us to do that. I think Mr. Chidas has sort of led the way in this effort, and I just think those are fantastic. And if we could couple those with radio spots to go along with it, I guess those could work as radio. But those are really good.
Yeah, I'm sorry that we didn't have the Spanish spots today. They're producing those this afternoon.
Okay, great. So we're to consider an emergency order tonight at our meeting at 5 o'clock. That order a draft of that has been sent out to each of you, I believe. I'm going to let you refer to that right now, if you would. It's going to be my request that this council consider adding to our emergency order an exhibit which is called out in the order and is attached to the order at the back, and that would be the summary of the work of our alert task force, specifically the Lubbock Safe guidelines. And there's going to be a process that a business can go through, and I know Mr. Marcinkowski mentioned that, and we'll probably talk a bit more about that. But I want to make sure that everybody sees this, and I want Mr. Atkinson just to hit the real high points on this order, and then we'll have some discussion, and then we're also posted to discuss this with our attorneys in executive session. Jared?
Thank you, Mayor. Council, if you would, let's go to page 2. Let's go to page 2. One of the things that was done as your city attorney's office worked to draft this for us, we have taken out a lot of what had been in prior declarations to where maybe the governor's orders left room, and we were able to come up with local deals. That's largely been pulled. An exception does appear on the top of page 2. This is simply a call out to the White House and to the CDC guidelines. This talks about vulnerable individuals, talks about physical distancing, groups not more than 10, minimize travel if you can, those things. This is not inconsistent with the governor's order, and in fact is referenced in the governor's orders. We have simply printed it in the declaration for your consideration today. If you'll turn to page So we can skip page 3. Let's go to number 4, page 4. You see here a very explicit statement. The mayor and then ideally the city council are going to adopt GA 18. You're just going to adopt that in whole. Immediately below that in paragraph 12, stay home if you're sick. Okay, this does live from a prior declaration that the city has. And this is simply, and this is actually enforceable under your public health authority, but if you are sick, you have COVID-19 symptoms, you need to stay home. That's been the rule. We're maintaining that as a rule. And then it defines what that means, how long you have to be without symptoms, etc. There are no changes to that. Go to page 5, if you would. Here is where we call out the Lubbock Safe program that Mr. Marcinkowski has just presented to you. The recommendation of the Lubbock Economic Recovery Task Force is for the mayor and the city council to adopt the voluntary Lubbock Safe program. If you do that, the document that it was used to develop Dave's presentation is attached then to this declaration and continues forward. Number 14 is a call out that we may amend, the mayor or the designee of the mayor may amend these guidelines or clarify it or interpret it. This is tremendous work. There's going to be something that we need to move quickly to address, and this provides that authority to do so. Paragraph 17 at the bottom of page 5. For any workplace that is open, you're going to have to do social distancing and good hygiene. So that's a rule. That is a rule. Lubbock Safe is voluntary. It's an opportunity for businesses to certify to their customers and to their staff, hey, we're going above and beyond. I think Robert Taylor mentioned minimum guidelines. We've got a voluntary way to demonstrate you're doing more than that in Lubbock Safe. But in number 17, regardless of whether you choose to participate in that or not, you're still going to follow those good rules. The final item I would point out to you is on number 24. It's bottom of 6, top of 7. As the governor's GA 18 is set to go through May 15, so is this one. We know the governor will have to come back and issue an update. We expect the mayor and the city council to do the same. Of course, you have a city council meeting, regularly scheduled meeting on May the 12th. Mayor, council, I'll stop there and take a question if you'd like.
Why don't we go to Ms. Joy? She served on this in this effort and was very involved. Latrell, I'll let you start with comments and any questions you might have.
You're muted, Latrell.
Probably for me, it's more about comments than questions. I have to acknowledge what Steve Massengill said and what Dave Marcinkowski has said. But I think we need to take our hat off to Dave. There were times I'm sure he wanted to jump over his desk because we'd kind of get off on a tangent, and he was really good about bringing us back to where we were. Otherwise, I don't think we would have gotten here. I know he worked after hours and early morning hours, and so thanks for chairing our subcommittee. I really appreciate that. People have talked about willingness to compromise and look at both sides, and I think that's good. They talked about conferring with the state strike force. We had cooperation there, which was very helpful. But at the top of the list, every time we got down to an issue, it's what's best for the citizens of Lubbock. And that's what this is about. I expect a healthy discussion today from council. And I know there are a lot of issues that medical would like to see us address that we can't. But I think we've done the very best we can with what we have. We're going to follow the governor's order, but at the same time, the body of the work that's done by the subcommittee will live on in our Keep Lubbock Safe campaign. We cannot do this by ourselves. The council can't do it, the committee can't do it, law enforcement can't do it. It really boils down to the citizens of Lubbock buying in and saying, hey, this is what we can do, and we're going to do it. Because otherwise, it's just words on a piece of paper. And we don't need that. There are too many of us who are vulnerable. You know, this is really not about me or it's really about looking out for other people. And if we look out for other people, we'll be looking out for ourselves at the same time. So really proud of this group. I learned a lot about restaurants. I learned a lot about retail because people were willing to share, and they were willing to share the good and the bad. So I'm anxious to hear from the rest of the council because we've not really had that input at this point. So I'm going to stop, and I want to hear from my fellow council people.
Thank you, Ms. Joy. Let's go to the Mayor Pro Tem, Mr. Griffith.
I can tell by this document, there's been a whole lot of work put into this. I can tell there was not a lot of sleep in the past 2 weeks. I applaud everyone that on the task force, and Robert and Dave, thank you very much for taking the leadership of this. There's a whole lot to it. To your point, there's a lot of categories. So it's amazing to look through this, the work that y'all have done. I applaud you very much. But I also want to simplify it. I think the genius part of this is that we've got a message to our citizens. 3 things, even I can remember 3. Social distancing, wear a facial covering, and wash your hands. So it's really pretty simple. If folks will do this, this helps us get through this. Thank you all very, very much for your work. I'm humbled by everything you guys and girls have done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Let's go to Mr. Christian next.
Myself, thanks, Mr. Mayor. This is really incredible work. There's a couple of things that come to mind immediately, and it really has to do with what Ms. Joy said about we can put all these rules in place and we can make all these recommendations, but if people don't follow them and don't understand the magnitude of what may or could happen in the future if we don't abide by some of these rules. I just encourage the local businesses to think about their business, their business model, and what their business entails. Mr. Massengale and I had a conversation on Sunday is what he might put in place in regards to the Matador might be very different than what another store in regards to keeping his business safe and out of danger of being infected by COVID viruses. You know, face masks and face coverings have been obviously a big controversy, but in regards to Mr. Massengale's and I's conversation, I mean, there's a lot of things that business owners can control. But the one thing that they really can't control is knowing the health conditions of the customers that's walking through their door. So, you know, it sounds kind of a little bad, but it's not meant to be. The most, especially the smaller merchants, smaller square foot merchants, they have to assume that every customer that walks in their door is an asymptomatic carrier of COVID-19. So they're going to have to put some things in place of how they present the merchandise to their customers. Do they require all of their customers to wear a mask? Because, hey, I'm in a very, very high risk category. And so I wear a mask in stores for as much my protection as a stray sneeze. We all know that, you know, sometimes sneezes sneak up on us, not like a cough. we can hear a cough kind of working its way up through our throat. But what happened if a customer coughs in one of these merchant stores? And what are they going to have to do to mitigate the possibilities of COVID-19? So I'm going to just to summarize it. Yeah, each business is going to have to figure out what model is best for them, and they may have to put some more stringent rules based upon what they feel is best to keep their business safe.
Thank you, Mr. Christian. Mr. Chides?
Thank you, Mayor. First off, again, I extend my thank you to Steve, Robert, Dave, Ms. Luttrell. Job well done. I was somewhat worried about putting profit before people. You guys put that worry to rest. This program the task force has taken on is very prescriptive. I'm very much on board with that. The mayor kind of stole my thunder about the Spanish PSAs, which I'm glad that people are seeing the necessity. The numbers of 206 cases out there in the Hispanic neighbors, the population is 33%, yet we're making pretty close to 50% of the cases. It's unacceptable, and we have to reach out to the Hispanic, to the entire city. But we got to make sure we leave no one behind, because this COVID-19 does not discriminate. It's not jumping over my house to get to somebody else's. If I just happen to be there, I'm gonna get struck down by it. So we've got to make sure we reach out to everybody in the neighborhoods, whatever we can. At least we have done our due diligence. Again, thank you. Everybody on the committee has done a great job. And I'm glad, Steve, you said that the PSAs in Spanish are already being worked on. I did one a few days ago, and I am not your best air quality person. So if you can knock mine off the air and put yours on there, more power to you, my friend. Again, I'm excited to see this happening. A word to the public. If you don't do your part by maintaining safe distances, as we continue telling you, I don't want to see another spike and us having to do another shutdown. Because my concern is the second time this or the next time it spikes, I would hate to hear that it's even gotten worse than what it is now. This is not to be taken lightly by anyone. This is a serious situation. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, the task force, for the brilliant job you guys are doing.
Thank you, Mr. Chides. Ms. Patterson-Harris. You're still muted, Sheila. There you go.
I just have a quick question. I heard this statement that we had the various subcommittees. Who made up and how many participants did we have on the medical subcommittee?
Mr. Massingo?
Yeah, ask your next question and I'll look it up in the meantime and you call back on me and I'll explain it.
Sheila, do you have anything else? Is that all you have? Do you have comments too?
That was my main concern. I just want to make sure and that we keep in mind throughout this and anything that anytime we're dealing with the community, we want to always make sure that we're hearing and including every area of this city. I can't reiterate that enough to say, even when we're getting the message out, make sure we're getting the message out so that we reach everybody. I know we get in a hurry and get going and want to get stuff out, but we have to stop and make sure that we're including everybody and that we want everybody to hear the message. We want to get the message out in all fashions so that everybody will hear it and receive it.
I've got the list.
Thank you, Thank you, Sheila. Well said.
Okay, so our medical science committee was chaired by Richard Parks from Covenant. Bishop Bill Watson was on that committee. Dr. Joshua Hill, Mark Funderburk from UMC. That committee was advised by Catherine Wells, obviously well known to this group, and John Osborne.
Thank you, Mr. Massingo.
Mayor?
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Mr. Taylor. Let's go to Mr. Taylor real quick and then Ms. Joy. Okay?
Yeah, just quickly, I want the council to know that it didn't stop there. We reached out when we felt like we did not have maybe enough opinions in a certain area. I even went to my annual physical, and the doctor questioned me for 5 minutes, and I questioned him for about 30. So we reached out to to people in the dental industry. So we did reach out to other people, and so we did not stop at what just where the committee was. Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Joy.
We didn't talk about this when we were going over the governor's order, but he has the ability to walk this opening back, restrict it more, and it's based upon our numbers and what we see going forward. And so people need to understand that that's why this is so very important. We want the economy to move on, but if our numbers take a dive, I don't think there's any question that he will back us up, and we'll have some businesses closed. Don't think that's good for us or good for the economy. So he's really, in a backhanded sort of way, has put it on the people who live in Lubbock to make this work. And I trust that they can do that. I don't have any doubt that we can do it. The other thing that we really didn't, I think, give enough credit to is the health department, the Lubbock Health Department. They were doing things early on that a lot of cities didn't do. They were investigating, they were following up who had visited with whom, who had been around with whom. They spent all their time and their hours doing that. And we have to give credit to Catherine Wells and to Dr. Cook, because I don't think we would be where we are today had it not been for their early intervention. They intervened early in the nursing facilities and identified that problem. And if you're watching any of the news and listening, even our neighbors in New Mexico are dealing with huge amounts of nursing home and assisted living cases, and they got on it early. And so I just think we need to say thank you to Catherine and to her staff and to Dr. Cook.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I'm gonna take us to executive session right here. We're gonna continue discussing this topic there, but I'm gonna add on to Ms. Joy's point back with a couple things. This council got a lot of grief 2 weeks ago, or for a 2.5 week period, because we interpreted the governor's order literally. And some of our neighbors, regional neighbors, chose not to do so. They'd like to be in the position we're in today. And I believe it's because the citizens of Lubbock took this seriously. Reopening does not kill this virus. As Dr. Cook likes to say, virus ain't got no legs, okay? And we've got to continue to do the right thing so we can prosper. And when I say prosper, I'm not talking about businesses prosper. I mean us live our lives, be able to go to football games this fall, be able to send our kids to school, be able to safely visit our grandparents in adult homes. There's a business on North University that was closed yesterday because they couldn't follow the rules. Our health department, our public health official have been on point the entire time. In fact, a lot of what you see from the state, I might add finally, on some of these senior living facilities is what we've been doing here. And our folks are actually in conversation with the CDC about what we've learned. This contact tracing that the governor talked about yesterday, we've been doing contact tracing since case 1, and we'll continue to do it. And we've got volunteers from the Health Science Center, medical students that are helping us do certain things that the health department does, and nurses from LISD helping us do certain things so we can put more of our RNs from the health department out doing contact tracing. That means that we want to know where that person who's positive has been so we can keep people safe. That'll continue to be our goal as we reopen. The keys got taken away from us yesterday. We were encouraged a month ago, 6 weeks ago, to take the lead and do the best things for our community. Well, the keys were taken away. And that's the governor's prerogative. But we're going to offer another, through this recommendation, we're going to offer what I think is a Lubbock safe model that the state will copy, because I believe it puts our citizens in the very best position to both enjoy retail, enjoy business, but to do it safely.
Mr. Mayor, before you move on, is if you might just briefly, so how will somebody opt in to this program?
Great question. Let's sort of end with that. We'll go to executive session. We'll do our business there. We'll come back out a regular session at 5. We're going to come back out at 5 tonight because we've scheduled we have a very brief meeting, as you guys have seen from our agenda. We have a 6 o'clock press conference tonight. And I think it's critical that we roll at 6 so we get this on the news. I think it's to the point of sharing the information. So Mr. Atkinson or Mr. Massengale, if one of y'all would explain the way someone would opt in to Lubbock Safe. Mr. Atkinson?
Thank you, Mayor. We have currently, it's behind the electronic curtain, so to speak. We currently have a website that's set up. We have a web address. We have all of that. A business that chooses to participate in Lubbock Safe will go into that website. It's a self-certification to start with. They'll certify, I will follow the general conditions. It'll take you to the next deal. I am a restaurant, therefore here are those other guidelines. They certify that. We get their business name, contact information, etc. A couple of things happens then. Generates a notice back to staff. I have 20 staff members, as Mr. Marcinkowski mentioned, that are ready to go, and they will deliver those decals that the business will be able to place so that their customers see it, their employees will see that. We will go as fast as we can and get all of that delivered. We'll also list businesses by name. They've chosen to do this. They've gone through that certification. We will list them. We've been in very close contact through the alert with the Chamber of Commerce and with others. We're going to do everything we can to let the public know these businesses have chosen to go above and beyond. We will get to the point that we'll be able to go back and do inspections, and certainly we'll respond if there's a complaint. But these people are making a choice to do more, and we're going to go as quick as we can so that 12:01 a.m. Friday, they're ready to take off running.
Mr. Atkinson, I'd be happy to help deliver those.
Mr. Mayor, I think you're on mute.
Thank you, Mr. Christian. We may take you up on that. Okay. Once again, thanks to Mr. Taylor, Mr. Marcinkowski. We're gonna move to executive session now. Council will hold executive session today for the purpose of consulting with city staff regarding pending or contemplated litigation or settlement agreement, and to hold consultation with an attorney under section 551.0 section 071 of the Texas Government Code. Also to discuss the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property under section 551.072 of the Texas Government Code. City Council, it is 3:54 and we are recessed to executive session. Council, will remind you, you need to leave this meeting and join the executive session meeting. Mr. Massengale will add you to that meeting. It's a hosted meeting. And then we will come back to our regular meeting at 5 o'clock. Lubbock City Council is in recess to executive session. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. It's 5:03 and the Lubbock City Council will come back to session. We're returning from executive session. We will now have our ceremonial items as we begin our meeting. We'll call our regular meeting to order after those. As it's our practice, and Mr. Yearwood, by the way, I'm unable to start my video, so if there's a way you can check on that, not that people. Okay, thank you. Minister Dale Mannon from the Green Lawn Church of Christ is with us tonight to open our meeting with a word of prayer. I was doing a little research on Pastor Mannon earlier. That's not true, but I want to tie Pastor Mannon to the city council quickly, because his daughter and our Abby Dye, who we all work very closely with, are dear friends, went to school together. And when Abby heard that Dale was opening our meeting today, there was a big smile on her face. So Dale, we were so thankful that you're willing to join us to open our meeting. After your prayer, the Mayor Pro Tem will lead us in the pledges. And so the floor is yours, Pastor.
Thank you for the invitation and for the opportunity. Let's pray together. Dear gracious and kind Father in heaven, Lord and Savior Jesus Christ and powerful Holy Spirit, bless your holy name. Please hear our humbled plea for your grace and mercy. God, this pandemic has humbled us in ways we could not have imagined. I pray that it reminds us of our weaknesses, vulnerability, and need for you. Please forgive us for times we have been arrogant. We turn to you, asking you to empower a spirit of humility, gratitude, and love instead of pride and political posturing. Please make us rich in faith and hope and love. Thank you for the strong leadership you have given us. Despite there being so much we don't know, people from the president to our governor, to our mayor, to our first responders, medical personnel, essential workers, and all of us common people doing little things has given needed guidance and stability during this strange and tumultuous time. Please continue to give our leaders courage and wisdom as they face the criticisms and unknowns that are still ahead. Let them not grow weary while doing good. Father, I have deep concern for the individuals and families who are affected by lost income, lost jobs, lost businesses, who can't pay their rent or can't pay their employees, or watching helplessly as everything they've worked for disintegrates. Would you please bless them with hope, strength, and real opportunities to regain what they have lost? And would you bless this council with wisdom to do right by these people? Father, bless the individuals and families who have experienced COVID-19, everyone from New York City to Wuhan, China, to Barcelona, Spain, and beyond. Please heal and restore health to those who are suffering. And please comfort those who are grieving. Dear Sovereign Lord, bless your holy name. This is complicated and confusing, but our eyes are upon you. Please bless our city council, our city, our state, our nation, and our world. We lift this prayer up through the powerful name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Pastor. Will you please join me in the pledges of allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible. Thank you.
Minister Manning, we really appreciate you opening our meeting with your prayer this evening. Mayor Pro Tem, you did a wonderful job on the pledges, as usual. It's 5:08, and I will call the Lubbock City Council to order. Today is Tuesday, the 28th of April, 2020, and we are in our regularly scheduled meeting today. Our first item today, and council, I might remind everyone to mute your phones, and because we're going to start with citizen comments, and I'll go to Ms. Garza. Or do we have citizen comments for this evening?
There are no citizen comments.
Thank you, Courtney. No citizen comments. We'll move now to item 5. Council, item 5 is the minutes. The minutes from the March 24th, 2020 regular city council meeting and the April 3rd, 2020 special city council meeting related to COVID-19 were both included in the agenda book. In order to begin discussions, there a motion to approve those minutes. Mayor Pro Tem?
Second.
Thank you. Got a motion from Mr. Chidas and a second from Mayor Pro Tem. Mr. Chidas is pretty quick on the draw there. I saw you reaching first there, Mayor Pro Tem. Mr. Chidas beat you. Okay.
Fast.
Are there additions or corrections to the minutes that were presented in our agenda? Okay. If that's the case, there's a motion on the floor to approve the minutes as presented. Please indicate your support by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed by the same sign? Okay, that motion carries 7-0. We'll move now to item 6 on our work tonight. Item 6 is the consent agenda. Consent agenda items are considered to be routine and are enacted by one motion without separate discussion. If the council does desire to discuss an item, that item is removed from the consent agenda and is considered separately. Council, I don't believe we have any pulls tonight. I just want to confirm that. Are there anybody have a pull tonight?
No.
Okay, so if that's the case, I will open the floor to a motion to approve a motion to consider the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Maxingale. Thank you, Mr. Chidas. We've got a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed by that same sign? Motion carries 7-0. We'll move now to our regular agenda. It begins with item 7.1. Items 7.1 and 7.2 are related. And I thought before we considered them, we might have a brief presentation. Mr. Atkinson.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council. Item 7.1 is considering for the mayor to issue his 8th declaration of disaster. Before we step briefly through the declaration of disaster, I'd like to go back. I have 3 slides to show the council. If you would give me just a moment, I'll start that now. Okay, the slide before you should be a track of the active cases by day in Lubbock. This would be from the 7th of April to the 27th. So from the 7th to yesterday, council would draw your attention to how the curve has flattened quite significantly and has been doing so really since the 19th of April. I will add some information in a moment. But we'll start with this slide, active cases by day in Lubbock. We move to the second slide. Collectively, the 3 you'll see are the 3 key metrics we're watching. These are our new cases per day, and you see how that has come down dramatically. If we begin back on April the 11th and 12th, we had 3 days that were above 30 new cases a day. You now see how that has flattened off in all cases below 15 or below since the 17th of April. And in fact, for the last 3 days at 5 or below. I'll pause here. Your public health team is working as we speak on their call. We do expect that the announcement for cases today will be 3 new cases today. That'll be balanced with 26 recoveries and 0 deaths to report for today. So again, we should see that released here shortly after 5:30 today. We've talked a lot about testing and the availability of testing in Lubbock at 2 times the state average. I think you will also see today, and this is really just our partners with the various laboratories, are doing internal audits and being sure that everything is reported. And you'll see a significant jump in the number of reported negative cases today, which is actually cases that occurred or tests that occurred previously. But that's all positive and shows the metrics moving in our favor. So my final slide, this represents hospital capacity. So if you look at the blue line across the bottom, that is your number of hospitalized patients in our 2 hospitals here. You see that the hospitalized patient number has really traded very tightly around 31 individuals per day. It's been a little less. It's hardly been any more, but that represents a flat line. Those are the number of COVID patients in our local hospitals. The orange line, that is the hospital capacity. That is not the total number of beds. The total number of beds in Lubbock is actually well above the top scale of this chart, but it shows what's available. It shows what's available. So the gap between your blue line and your orange line, those are available beds in the community. They're not necessarily COVID beds, but it does speak to the total capacity. You see the orange line took a slight downturn on the 27th of April, came down to just under 600. That has nothing to do with COVID. This has to do with the state relaxing some of their guidelines and some of their orders that now allows our facilities, if they choose, to do certain elective surgeries. So obviously those procedures will take up a few beds, and that's the impact you see here. But would again point you to the difference between the blue and the orange. And even as of yesterday, that available capacity is well under 500, while we're running with about 31 COVID patients that are in the hospital. With that, I'm going to turn off the screen share. I'm going to ask it nicely to turn off. And there we go. I think we came back. Mayor, if there are no questions on the data, I'll very quickly step you through the 8th declaration of disaster.
That'd be fine. Thank you. Please do so.
Yes, sir. So the 8th declaration of disaster is being presented to the mayor today. This 8th declaration is designed to bring the mayoral declaration in compliance with the newly issued executive order from Governor Abbott, GA 18. So, council, if you have your document available to you, if you would turn to the second page, I will highlight a few of the features that go through this. On the top of page 2, whereas the White House and the CDC guidelines. So this is a call out to the Opening Up America Again guidance. Such guidance is referenced in GA 18. We've highlighted A, B, C, and D. These are some operative items that are consistent with GA 18 that the mayor will consider shortly. Vulnerable individuals should continue to shelter in place. All individuals, when in public, should maximize physical distance from others. C, avoid socializing in groups of more than 10 in circumstances that do not allow for appropriate physical distancing. And letter D, minimize non-essential travel and adhere to the CDC guidelines regarding isolation following travel if that becomes necessary. Following that, you see references to GA 18. I'll take you to the top of page 3. This is language taken straight from GA 18. And it says every person in Texas shall, except where necessary to provide or obtain essential services or reopen services, minimize social gathering, and minimize in-person contact with people who are not in the same household. People over the age of 65, however, are strongly encouraged to stay at home as much as possible, to maintain appropriate distance from any member in the household who has been out of the residence in the previous 14 days, and if leaving home to implement social distance, practice good hygiene, environmental cleanliness, and sanitation. So this is pulled straight out and reprinted here for easy reference. Let's go to page 4. On page 4, you have an explicit statement regarding the Governor's Order GA-18. The Governor's Order GA-18 is hereby adopted by reference and incorporated herein as if copied verbatim. To the extent any provision of GA-18 or a subsequent order conflicts with a provision of this declaration, GA-18 supersedes and controls. The very next, which is the bottom of page 4, it is paragraph 12. We have retained this from your prior local declarations. Stay at home if you are sick. So this repeats as you have had in your prior orders. A person who is sick or experiencing symptoms of COVID-19, stay at home. And then we define what it takes when the symptoms cease to get back out in public. Take you to page 5, paragraph 13. This is really an operative feature of this declaration. This is the voluntary Lubbock Safe program. Council saw a presentation and work session today that's the result of the work of your Lubbock Economic Recovery Task Force. They have produced a program entitled Lubbock Safe. This is voluntary, but it is an above and beyond standard that a business can ascribe to if they choose. And if they choose, they'll be recognized for doing that. This order picks up the Lubbock Safe Guidelines program and attaches it as Exhibit A, and it puts it into force and effect. Again, it is voluntary. The business is not required to do it in order to reopen under the governor's orders, but it does provide them an ability to say, I'm doing more. I've gone above the minimum. The GA-18 states minimums. I've gone above those minimums, and I want to provide assurance to my customers and to my employees that we're doing more here. And I think we'll have a brief presentation. Number 14, we do call out a delegation authority. The Lubbock Safe Guidelines are tremendous work. There's no doubt something that will need to be tweaked or adjusted. This has provided that ability to do so. One more I wish to speak to. Let's look at number 17 on the same page, on page 5. Any workplace that remains open, for any workplace that remains open, management of the business should facilitate and encourage practicing social distancing and good hygiene. And it retains the language about if it's feasible, work from home. It's not mandatory to work from home. But any business that's open, even the reopened services under GA-18, and even the essential services for which many of the chains have been removed, they still have to adhere to these guidelines, good social distance. This declaration is established such that it will go into effect at 12:01 a.m. May the 1st, which is this Friday morning. It will run through May 15th, 2020. The next regularly scheduled city council meeting is on May the 12th. Would also note that GA-18 expires on May the 15th as well. And thus the governor, to take the state into phase 2, will be issuing a new executive order either to continue where we are with phase 1 or to take us in to phase 2. Mayor, council, if there's any questions to this point, I'll answer them. If not, I would turn it over for your Lubbock Safe presentation.
Mr. Massengale.
Thank you, Mayor. Before I make my comments, I'd like if Mr. Yearwood could bring Mr. Taylor and Mr. Marcinkowski in on the screen, please. We're just waiting for Dave to appear. There we go. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for spending some more time with us this evening. Mayor, what seems like months has only been a few days since the Lubbock Economic Recovery Task Force has begun their work, which actually began on April 20th. 22 people that represent a variety of businesses and organizations in Lubbock charged with developing a strategy to safely and responsibly open our city back up. I've counted that we've had 12 meetings, hundreds of man hours, and more time on Zoom than we can stand. Many revisions to a document that we feel has become very productive. And although we wish we could have predicted what the governor would do, we were not able to do that. I'm so proud that this group was laser focused on getting our citizens back to work and understanding the balance between lives and livelihoods. They've just done amazing work. I'm so proud to have worked with them. I think everyone will be pleased with the product that you're about to see and the guidelines that they will deliver. I'm very grateful before I turn it over to my co-chair, Robert Taylor, and his leadership during this process. It took everybody on board to get to where we're at, and Robert was key. So Robert, I'll kick it to you for any comments.
Okay, just briefly, and thank you, Steve. Thank you for all your leadership. And Mayor, as we go back and look for how we got to where we are today, and we looked first at the governor's decrees. Many times it talked about minimum standard and minimum protocol. I think that's important as we compare that to what the committee's work was. We had a very diverse committee, a lot of different areas represented. We're very vocal, several opinions. We valued all opinions. We didn't stop there. We reached out to citizens, we reached out to groups, we reached out to businesses. We provided a lot of research material as we worked through it. I really honestly believe that the plan that we built was a great plan and still will be a great plan. I think it would have put several more people back to work. And I also think it gave a lot of best practices that implemented successfully would guarantee the success of Lubbock workers going back. As we look at the committee, it is ongoing. It will not be one and done. As we go through this process, there'll be things to implement and change and tweak as we go forward. This document comes with the importance of communication to our citizens and to business owners and other people in the community. I think you'll see some examples of some communication efforts later on tonight. I think it's key that we understand that our goal was to mitigate the impact of the virus while returning citizens to their jobs and building back and putting food on the table and work as safely as possible. It's important for us to stay focused going forward and know what we can do to control the virus. This is just one step of many steps that we'll see going forward. And I think it's so important that we understand that the success is in the hands of our citizens and the individuals, whether they're employees or employers, and in the hands of our businesses to be successful. And we want everybody to understand what it takes and what we have to do to control the virus and reopen our business community. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Steve. I'd like to turn it over to Dave McMikowski, who will give a brief review of the committee's work.
Thanks, Robert. Appreciate it. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for your time. Thank you for this opportunity to be a part of this task force. It's an amazing what can get accomplished when a group of thoughtful and compassionate volunteers get together with one goal in mind. Our group put themselves, took the personal out of it, and the driving force was really three things. What's best for Lubbock? How do we keep our citizens healthy and safe? And then how do we get as many citizens as we can back to work? We began our process a little over a week ago. And for the last week, we've really, up until yesterday when the governor's order, we were kind of shooting at a target that we knew could move. And so we took the approach to be as thorough as we could. I can't thank our task force enough and the different components that we had. It wasn't like we all just, kumbaya agreed. We had healthy debates. It was very respectful, and I'm proud of what I'm here to able to offer. I'm not going to go into a lot of details. I'm going to try to keep it high level so we can move this thing along, as since we went over it in more detail earlier today. Talking about the governor and what his orders did, his view, it covers more than just Lubbock, Texas. It covers the whole state of Texas. His information is far beyond what we probably had access to, even though I can't thank the staff and Garrett enough for their hard work and what they were able to provide for us through this process. If this document was reviewed, if the governor gave us the green light to approve everything that we were hoping to do, it would look completely different than the one that you're looking at today. Just real quick summary of that. Ours, we were hoping to open up personal care businesses, fitness and gym facilities, bowling alleys. Bars were with restaurants, as well as the things that are in this document. GA18 made that impossible for us to do, and so we moved them down to our phase 2, along with the items that were already in phase 2: nightclubs, public swimming pools, amusement parks, arcades, bounce houses. That being said, that's fine. We're hopeful that as we move to May 18th, that Texans do what they need to do, where the governor gives us the green light to open these other facilities up, and we'll be ready as a task force to share with you at that point in time the recommendations we had at this. But as Robert kind of shared, the governor's outline for his report for opening Texas dated yesterday, those are the minimum requirements. What I'm here to present today is a Lubbock Safe program that takes that a step further, that if businesses are willing to voluntarily join and self-report the Lubbock Cares program, they'll receive a sticker acknowledging that they can post in their windows at the entry of their establishments, as well as we'll record them and list them on the Lubbock Cares website. There will be a portal that will open up sometime here well before Friday, where our businesses can go on and log in, create an account, I guess is how you'd say it, identify what kind of business that they are a part of. They'll get the appropriate guidelines, look at the general health and safety guidelines first that they'll acknowledge that they're going to do, and then they'll get their specific businesses guidelines. Once they self-report that they're going to do that, Mr. Atkinson and he's got a team of 20 people who's going to go out and deliver those placards that they can display. And our hope and our prayer is that Lubbock continues to take this virus very seriously and takes us up on these guidelines that I'm about to give to you right now. Our hope is that this program takes effect at the same time as the governor's order does, May 1st at midnight. Or I'm sorry, midnight Thursday night, 12:01 Friday morning, I guess is more like it. Again, I'm going to go through this really quickly. We've got a general health and safety guidelines section. This applies to all businesses. There's a lot of things in the governor's Open Texas report that you would expect to find in this, that, washing your hands, employers washing their hands, providing hand sanitizer, strongly recommending face coverings, cleaning, sanitizing, touch points, touch payment options, all those kinds of things. A few items that I want to bring to everyone's attention here is that we are strongly recommending face coverings for all employees and customers entering the business. Prior to the governor's order, we were actually looking to require face coverings of all employees, but not patrons of those establishments. But now it says strongly recommended for both. We put in here a number of different places the importance of us protecting our at-risk population. And that really speaks to beyond just those people who are at risk, and our encouragement, both in requesting signage and as a notice through these guidelines, for those people to stay home as much as possible. But it's to all Lubbock citizens and their ability to follow enough these guidelines and do what it takes so we can protect our at-risk population. We couldn't be more concerned about that group. And we want to make sure that everybody understands how important it is for everyone in Lubbock to take these seriously, not just those folks who maybe fall into that category. We are employees, including volunteers, washing hands, hand sanitizers. Difference between us and the governor is we're asking for some barrier to be put in place between the cashier and people checking out. That could be something as simple as a chair or a small table, just to create that social distancing gap. We are looking for forehead temperature scans from our employers to our employees when they start their shift, as well as a health survey that our medical committee has worked up. If somebody answers affirmative to any one of those items, or they have a temperature in excess of 100 degrees Fahrenheit, we're asking them to go home and then to follow the governor's orders as it relates to when they could come back. That's really, I'm not going to go into too much detail since we've already done that. Include shopping malls like the mall, like South Plains Mall. There's a 25% occupancy limit as per the governor's orders. We are asking that children under the age of 18 be accompanied at all times by an adult parent or guardian to be a part of the Lubbock Cares program. We're also asking, per the governor's orders, for all food courts, dining areas, play areas, interactive displays, and other settings which facilitate social gatherings to remain closed. Large big box store, big box retail. The challenge here is that if they're essential, considered essential, their guidelines really don't exist in terms of the number of people they're allowed in. We're hopeful that our big box retail groups, all big box retail, not just essential, will understand our request of, based on the size of your facility, either 25% of your fire marshal rating or a set number of people. For 30 to 45,000 square foot facilities, we're asking that set number of people to be 200, for 45,000 to 60,000 to be 250, and over 60,000 to be listed at 300 people. That number is whatever's less of the number, 200, 250, or 300, or 25% of the fire marshal code. We suspect it's going to be 200, 250, or 300, and we pray our big box retail understand our request and abide by this ask. Restaurants, as everybody saw, the governor has limited the size to 25% occupancy limit. Our hope was 50%, but we understand where the governor is coming from. And per their guidance, as well as ours originally, with 6 customers per table. We're asking for things like encouraging reservations to reduce customer waiting in groups for a table to open. The valet for services being suspended, except for those folks who have a disabled parking placard or plate, was in the governor's orders. We've adopted that. No self-serve buffets or stations. Patrons should only be able to order from a menu. That includes drink stations. And so if somebody wants to get a refill on a drink, we're asking that they get a new cup at that point in time. Same types of things as it relates to place settings, utensils, menus, condiments, for them to be single use or clean and sanitize after every customer. Only covered straws to be used. The rest is all cleaning and sanitization, except for the one big one is, unlike the governor's orders, we're asking to be a part of Lubbock Cares for restaurants to adopt requiring face coverings for all employees. Non-essential medical, same rules as it relates to 25% occupancy limit. We're asking for forehead temperature and health survey of all clients coming in to get treatment. If a client fails the health survey or has a temperature over 100 degrees Fahrenheit, we're asking them to be sent home and not treated. We realize at this point in time with any of these asks that it may be extremely challenging to get a forehead temperature scan or a face shield. Our hope is, that they just use the health survey or an alternative solution, but that our businesses actively seek out this equipment to be able to use for their places of business. We're asking with non-essential medical for children under the 18 and special needs customers that they can be allowed one parent or guardian to come back with them during treatment. We just ask that those guardians or parents are encouraged to wear a face cover. And like I said, we're asking for our non-essential medical. We're strongly encouraging them to wear a face shield or a face mask, and to always wear gloves and dispose of those gloves after each use. Our guidance for childcare providers comes from the guidance we received from the Texas Health and Human Services. These items came pretty much directly off of that grouping. I mean, I know there was one difference in that forehead temperature scan, and that guidance was 100.4 degrees. We're asking for that to be set at 100 degrees, be consistent with our other asks for this same category. Houses of worship. We received guidance that was made available to us by the Texas Attorney General and the Office of the Governor of Texas. They did a joint letter. Most everything comes off of that letter in this section. Couple things I would bring to people's attention is we do have an area for outdoor gatherings, and it is possible for a church to follow those outdoor gatherings and put on a worship service. And so we would encourage our places of worship to consider that as an option. If the other options for having an in-building service are too challenging. And this would include drive-in style services. The asks as it relates to this, I think, is worth pointing out, but these did come off the governor and the attorney general's documents, is, you know, to encourage social distancing, people sitting in their own parties or family units, and for there to be social distancing between those groups. Alternate rows to, again, create social distancing possibilities, to refrain from collection plates, to have either a central collection box or encourage online giving. And then consider how the sacraments can be administered without attendees touching the same surface and objects. In regards to event centers, the guidance was pretty specific as it related to museums, movie theaters, libraries. We do have listed on here things like funeral homes, et cetera, wedding facilities. If you'll note how it reads, if allowed by executive order GA 18, or a subsequent order, which means that staff and other sources are trying to get guidance from the governor as to whether or not we can add facilities like funeral homes and wedding venues and things to this group. Our hope is that will be the case, and we'll know before Friday. Some highlights here. Again, the 25% occupancy limit is in existence per the governor's orders. We're asking for all ticket sales to occur online and not at the box office. Similar rules as it relates to house of worship in terms of creating social distancing for people sitting down. We're asking for everyone to, for child play areas to remain closed and other interactive functions or exhibits. And I think the rest are all pretty self-explanatory. Outside gatherings. So we have a section called outside gatherings that includes graduations, concerts, weddings, political gatherings, those kinds of things. Worship services is in here as well for outdoor gatherings. There's really nothing in this section that I don't think really is not commonsensical. So I'm gonna jump ahead to outdoor farm or flea markets. We got asked as a group to consider them. And again, it's just a combination of a few other categories that we're directing people in this area to look at in order to open up. And then finally, the last group is warehousing, distribution, and manufacturing. We felt this was an important group for us to identify. Obviously, if they're essential services, they have, they're going to be open. But we've got some items in here that are specific to them as it relates to their equipment. And we are asking that all employees in this category wear face coverings. Taking an effort to cut down on time, I'm going to stop my report there and hand it off to Jared. Are we going to do the PSAs here, or are we done with this at this point in time, or Steve?
No, I would like to go ahead and run the PSAs. Mark, we're going to run 2 of those. I think you know which ones to queue up, and then we'll turn it into questions.
Lubbock is reopening safely. When you do your part, we can make Lubbock safe again.
I'm Michelle with Market Street. I have 3 kids and a mother with stage 4 lung cancer, so I wear a mask to do everything to protect my mother and to protect our guests. I wear my mask, you wear yours.
Keep a 6-foot distance. Wear your mask. Wash your hands. Don't let your guard down, as we can't afford to go backwards. Together, we can keep Lubbock safe and open.
Lubbock está reabriendo de forma segura. Cuando tú haces tu parte, podemos hacer Lubbock seguro otra vez.
Hola Lubbock, estamos abiertos. Nuestros negocios están listos y entusiasmados para servirles. Todos estamos juntos en esto. Usen sus máscaras y esperamos verlos muy pronto.
Mantén una distancia de 6 pies. Usa tu mascarilla. Lávate las manos. No bajes la guardia. No podemos ir hacia atrás. Juntos podemos mantener Lubbock seguro y abierto.
Thank you very much. That's part of our communications team from the ALERT Task Force. There's 4 of those, and we're grateful for our media partners that will have volunteered to push that out for us. Mayor?
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Massengill. I want to thank the entire group that has been working on this. I know there's still work for you guys to do, but this was a really big part of it. And so Mr. Taylor, Mr. Marcinkowski, also certainly Councilman Massengill and Councilwoman Joy, who are part of the group, and 18 other citizens and a group of sort of experts that's consulted them, as well as many other citizens who they reached out to. We're thankful for your work. It is important to get people back working and doing that safely. And I think that's the step we'll be taking on Friday. Council, it's item 7.1 is the declaration that we've been discussing. So it will be our 8th declaration, which, as we've mentioned, or my 8th declaration, which mirrors the governor's 18th declaration. In addition, we will be adding the Lubbock Safe guidelines that the ALERT report and guidelines that Mr. Marcinkowski just detailed. And that's what we discussed both in in work session and in executive session. I believe, Mr. Weaver, that I just need to make that declaration. Is that correct? I don't think that takes any other action.
That's correct, Mayor. You'll just execute that and declare that you have, and then the next item will be council action.
Okay, so I'll declare that I've executed that order, and we will move now to item 7.2. 7.2 is a resolution for the council to consider continuing and affirming that very same resolution with the appendix, which is the Lubbock Safe guidelines. And so in order to begin discussion, is there a motion?
I move to approve.
I'll take that as a motion from Ms. Joy and a second from Mr. Massengill, if that's okay. Discussion, please. Mr. Griffith.
Thank you, Mayor. I would also like to again thank everyone, Councilman Massengill, Ms. Joy. Thank you all for working your hard work on this, along with Robert, Dave, and everybody. Mr. Atkinson, thank you all very much. I'd like to also add, I think it's important to recognize 2 members of our community that served on the governor's task force. Ms. Carter Moran and Mr. Mark McDougall, and their efforts. Also, I appreciate their work on the governor's task force and getting our state moving back open, and our help with the Lubbock component of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Mr. Chavez, you ready?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor. I would also like to echo the thank yous to all the committee, the task force. Great job. Also, the production on the Spanish language PSA. Great. Hopefully, with that information that was afforded to the public, we'll start chipping away at that 206 number out there. It's going to take the public, it's going to take the community to start making a difference. Thank you, everyone, for all your help. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chavez. Mr. Christian.
I just want to say thank you too for all the hard work, but I also want to say something about this program in regards to something Mr. Massengill said several weeks ago, that we've got to start building up consumer confidence, as we open up their stores, there's going to be some apprehension about people going into these stores concerned about, is that store abiding by the rules and regulations and doing everything they can to make their business healthy, safe, if you will. So I think the people that participate in this voluntary program, and they have that sign on their door, it's going to give a sense of confidence for people that are going out shopping that those merchants are on board and they're going to do everything they can and more. Many of them are going to do more, and I think they should look at doing more based upon the type of business they are and what they feel like they need to do to keep their customers and their employees safe. So there's going to be some naysayers on this thing, but I do believe that this is a good program. Back to the idea of Mr. Massagill saying several weeks ago, we need to build consumer confidence.
Thank you, Mr. Christian. Ms. Joy.
When we returned from spring break this year, our lives changed. Our children's lives, our students, our universities, the city, everybody. It changed our lives. But as we went through the charts that Mr. Atkinson showed, it appears that everybody's good efforts at trying to stop and slow down this virus, at least at this point, are working. So congratulations to citizens who took this very seriously. And today we only have 3 new cases, and no deaths, which is amazing. And if we can keep that, then we will be able to reopen and get our economy going. Keep in mind that the governor has said, if a county or a city begins to look like its rate of incidence is going up, he can back this order up. So let's keep working for Lubbock. Let's be safe, and let's get our economy back on and all of our people back to work.
Thank you, Ms. Joy. Ms. Patterson-Harris.
I just wanted to make this comment and kind of ask that we share some information. I know in light of the governor's order, there's not much that we can buck at, even though there may be some concerns from individuals with regard to what he's put in place. As a part of the economic task force, I know that we had subcommittees that helped to come up with the plan that they were looking to implement. Could you share with us, those of you who were part of that committee, the outlook that those that were part of the medical group had to say with regard to the plan that you're looking to implement?
Yeah, I can respond to that, Sheila. Our medical and science community, our medical and science committee was key to provide us with the data and also help us assess risk as we made our decisions. And so they were able to do that. And for example, some of the topics in our guidance late last week, they were having a hard time wrapping their arms around it. But we worked with those businesses and came up with guidance that allowed them to be in a position to support the plan moving forward. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that with us having those folks as a part of the committee, that we really listened to what they had to say. Absolutely. And if they were in agreement with what this committee has finally put together, then I'm okay with that. I'll just make this comment. There's some stuff the governor implemented that makes me quiver. There's some things that were been recommended as a part of initially the part of the plan from the committee that I was concerned about as well. We are where we are. I would that the thing that has happened dealing with COVID-19, that it causes folks to do things differently, see things differently, see people and even groups of people differently. And so I just say we move forward and try to get out of this thing and be mindful of each other and utilize the things that we have in place.
Thank you, Ms. Patterson-Harris. Well said. Yeah, I don't want to belabor the point. I do want to thank once again our task force, our staff, our council for being a part of this effort. I do think that the efforts we've put in place over the last month appear to be working. However, as we start to warm up our business sector to phase things in, we've got to make sure that we keep people safe. And we will continue our efforts around testing. We open our 4th testing location tomorrow. I would like to announce a 5th one soon. I've asked Walgreens to bring a testing location to Lubbock. We'll see what we get. But testing is a big part of our strategy going forward, because you want to know where you potentially have cases, and when you do have them, you want to be able to then quickly do your contact tracing, sort of put a fence around it, solve the problems, things that we've been doing. I continue to be concerned about our citizens that are in our adult centers, our nursing homes, and our long-term care facilities. And I'm thankful for the work that our Public Health Authority and our health department have done to try to best provide for safety there. We will not trade soon for safe. We've got to be safe. We will balance these lives and livelihoods, and I think we can do that. And so I applaud the work of our citizens group working with our council to help us take this very important next step. Council, is there further discussion? Seeing none, there's a motion on the floor to approve item number 7.2. All those in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Any opposed by that same sign? That motion carries 7-0. I believe that concludes our business for the evening. Ms. Garza, is that correct?
That is correct. Thank you.
Mr. Weaver?
Yes, sir. I believe it does.
Thank you. Council, and I know we look forward to our next meeting. It'll be 2 weeks from tonight. We'll be meeting in our new city council chambers at Citizens Tower on May the 12th. And so we will be announcing our plans around that as we get closer to that, but we'll be able to certainly do that in a safe distancing type manner. And we're excited to be able to convene a meeting from there. I want to close by thanking the men and women of our community that are on the front line, those essential workers who have worked every day, the men and women who make sure that we have food in our stores, our small businesses, our restaurants that have remained open for curbside and takeout and delivery that have allowed so many of our families to eat. Certainly, the first responders that we think about, our fire and Lubbock Fire and Rescue and Police, the EMS, the Sheriff's Office, our medical professionals that staff our hospitals, our health department, and the volunteers that are helping our health department get their work done. I think we're thankful for all of you and your work. And on behalf of our entire community, a heartfelt bit of gratitude to all of you. It's a great day in Lubbock, Texas. It is 5:58 and the Lubbock City Council is adjourned.